record.
There you go. Thank you.
All right. Welcome, everybody. It is 7 p.m., our third day, session number 3. We are moving along. I can't believe it's almost already December. And we've got another, I think we've got two more sessions maybe, and then we're going to take a break in December and restart again in January. And actually, I'm really excited because I forgot to mention, Yvette, I wanted to say that we actually are ready to announce, we're going to send to everybody this week, I guess anybody who's living in the Greater Toronto area, that January the 28th, we are locked and ready to go. We have a room for 100 guests at a downtown location at Gowling WLG, which is a huge international legal firm. They work with clients around the world, and we're going to be partnering with Trowbridge Financial Professional Corporation. So if you're in Toronto, there's no ticket price. It's on us. It's going to be a great spread, and it's going to be at 2.5 hours where you can rub shoulders with us, ask us questions, ask questions about taxes, legal, and everything. And it'll be great. So we're going to announce that after this. We're going to send an email with the invitation if you're in the Greater Toronto area. That's January the 28th. All right. So people are still coming in. I'm going to, Yvette, can I give you host status to let people in?
Yes, absolutely. Watch out.
You might kick them out too, right? I'm not sure if anybody has any questions from last week. It was well attended. And I'm going to just share the screen a little bit to remind you what we talked about, and then we're going to get into today's session, which is really talking about how do we manage our wealth when we're not in Canada anymore. Like if any of you have RRSPs and tax-free savings accounts and RIFs or non-registered accounts, or you're going to sell your home and put the millions in a bank account, like how do we manage that if you're not here? Because there are rules and there are hurdles that you may or may not be aware of in your travels and your research that we're going to touch on today. Before we touch on that, I'm going to remind us that Mark and Mary Expat met with me last week, at least Mary did, by the post by Iveta, and we went through a financial, I guess, data dump where we confirmed everything that she and Mark had in terms of the types of accounts, in terms of their incomes, in terms of their expenses. We didn't quite go yet into what the expenses might be in Europe, because that's a topic for next week's session, when we're going to talk about what it's going to cost to live somewhere. Sorry, did someone say something?
No, we're good.
Okay, so this is what we did last week. We put all the different cash flow expenses that Mary and Mark are paying today to see, what would it even look like if they're just retiring in Canada? And we came up with that, well, they need a little bit of more planning because if they were to stay in Canada with the expenses that they have and the debts that they have, they're not going to fund their retirement fully. So we can either now start working on a plan on what to do to make sure that their plan is okay in Canada, or continue on with their idea of moving to Spain, where they're going to be selling their property and using the assets to fund it. But next question is, how do we figure out, how to invest or what to do? Because they told us they've got all these accounts, $80,000, $300,000 in an RSP, and that he was moderate and conservative. Like, what are these words? Like, what the heck does all these mean? Because are you just pegged in a hole that you're you're a balanced Canadian investor? And what exactly does that mean, balanced Canadian investor? These are lingos that we use in the financial industry. So Yvette is going to actually be the presenter today and interview Mark, which will be me. So I'm going to put my Mark hat on. And Yvette, I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and you can interview me for how we figure out. And this is, by the way, this is very important for you to understand. We're not just telling you this because this is how we do things. When you're there in Europe, wherever you are, it's really important to understand from this side of the fence why we're asking these questions, because you might even feel like handcuffed. Like, why aren't they helping me? Why is it like I'm calling and I need some help, but they're asking me all these questions? Because this is a securities law that all financial institutions are under, whether you're with IG or whether you're with Royal Bank or whether Edward Jones. These are standard questions that are going to be needed to answer. So that's why this is important for you to understand. Okay?
Okay.
But
All
okay.
right. Yes. Well, thank you very much, Mark. Welcome. And thank you for being here. Allow me to ask you back. Where is Mary?
Oh, she's walking the dog.
I don't know if you guys, anyone rewatched the previous session, but there was a man sleeping with a dog not walking. That was the whole joke. It was all throughout the recording. So finally, he wasn't walking but sleeping. All right. So let's get right into it. And Mark, I will go with you through investment profile questionnaire. There will be about 14 questions where we will be able to determine which one of those fancy words, conservative, moderate, aggressive, which one are you? And we're trying to make it very simple in layman terms to understand the questions and to try to determine that risk profile because markets are funny. Yes, indeed, they always go up if you live for 150 years. However, it depends on the time frame and it depends on what is the money invested into and how can we afford to take the downturn or not. Because what is the biggest risk at the end of the day? Do you know,
I'm not
Mark?
going to have enough money.
That's one of them. But the biggest risk that we are aware of is inflation. So if your money is not performing at par, this is a bit of a issue that we need to address. So let's jump right into it. I'll share my screen and tell me please that you do see it.
I do.
You do. Excellent. Okay. Now I have to move a little bit my boxes. So once again, 14 questions asked in funny different ways, basically trying to get you to understand the same intent. Okay. The question number one. So investment objective. So when we look at your money in general, and we're going to do just this one investment profile as an example, in reality, there should be a separate investment profile for each platform. Let it be TFSA, RSP, RIF, Lira, whatever the non-registered accounts, so whatever are the accounts. But let's look at it in a general aspect, just to get an idea for the purpose of this interview and exercise, okay?
Okay.
So, Mark, what is the objective of this investment that you have?
Well, for my retirement, I want to make sure
Retirement. So we
money.
have, yeah, go ahead.
I want to make sure I have enough money in retirement.
Okay, very, very good answer. So as you can see, we have multiple choice options, and we are picking retirement. So let's move on. And I'm gonna try to move this very slowly because I think it jumps pages. All right, so investment time horizon.
Before we get into the investment time horizon, I'm going to read you a little bit of a blurb from the Cero.ca website. And they say that the investment time horizon is the period from now to when the client will need to access a significant portion of the money invested. When a client identifies their investment time horizon, the member or approved person, that would be us, has a responsibility to assess its feasibility and reasonableness relative to the client's liquidity needs, age, investment needs and objectives, risk profile, and other particular circumstances. And that's because the length of the client's investment time horizon impacts the types of investments that may be suitable for the client. Hope that helps.
The length of your investment time horizon impacts the types of investments that may be suitable for you. Investors with the time horizon of greater than 3 years have a greater degree of flexibility when building a portfolio, although risk tolerance and investment objectives must also be considered. If you have a very short time horizon, more conservative investments like GICs or money market funds may be the only suitable option for you. So, Serge, you understand?
Well, I
Serge,
mean, I
Mark.
need the money. I need the money next year. So does that, I guess I have to put everything in. GIC.
GIC. Okay, that's a very good point you're making. You will need the money next year. Does that mean you think that you will withdraw it all in one
No,
shot?
no.
No.
I mean, I need to start using it next year.
Okay, so that
Okay.
is something that is slightly different. So here we have an option of when do you expect to withdraw a significant portion, 1/3 or more of the money in your investment profile.
Well, I want it
So,
to last as long as possible, hopefully. So
all right.
I don't expect to take a significant portion next year.
So not more than 1/3. So do you think it would be fair to say that you are looking at 10 years and more? Or would it be more comfortable with 6 to 10? Because it doesn't mean, don't forget, we're talking of significant portion withdrawal, right? So 1/3. So the money, once again, is supposed to stay invested and keep averaging and beating inflation to support your lifestyle
Like honestly,
abroad.
I don't know. Like I'm hoping that you guys can answer that question for me to say like how long it can last. I just know that I need to start drawing it probably, well, hopefully not next year if I'm moving, but within a couple of years that I'll start to need an income since I won't be working there. But
All
as for
right.
I don't know how long, like I'm hoping that you'll be able to answer that for me.
Well, it's a tough question on me as well, but then we can always adjust to see where the risk profile takes us.
Hmm.
So let's pick with you maybe 3 to 6 years.
Yeah, okay.
Does that sound fair?
Yeah,
Because once
okay.
again, you're not pulling out the full amount, right?
Right. Okay.
Okay. All right. And once again, this can be all adjusted. So let's move on to investment knowledge. If you have a high level of investment knowledge, you have a good understanding of the relative risks of various types of investments and understand how the level of risk taken affect potential returns. If you have very little knowledge of your investments and financial markets,
Yeah.
speculation and high risk investments and strategies are likely not suitable options for you. Okay, so let's look at the options and tell me how well you see it. Sorry, I
I'm
knew it's
definitely
jumps
novice.
pages.
Yeah.
You're definitely novice.
Investment knowledge should reflect the client's understanding of investing, investment products, and their associated risks. This includes the client's understanding of financial markets, the relative risk and limitations of various types of investments, and how the level of risk taken affects potential returns. Information sourced from Zero.ca.
Now, sorry, I don't think I can move it properly here on the
That's
screen.
okay. I can see it on my screen. I'm not excellent, that's for sure. I think I'm
Can
novice.
you
Like,
see all four options?
yeah,
All
I
right,
can. I've had mutual funds
novice.
before,
Now,
but I don't know what I don't know what I'm doing. Like, honestly, I just kind of
okay,
listen to what the bank.
so whatever the bank suggests. Okay, so you're obviously not novice because you already have your platforms and they are quite significant platforms with significant investment amounts in there. So you have experienced most likely ups and downs of the market, and that probably played a role a little bit on your emotions, most likely. So there is experience most likely. Would that be fair to say?
Well, I mean, I've had the ups and downs. Not that I know that I'm what's happening, but yeah, they have gone up and down. I know that.
Okay. So I think it would it be fair then in this case to name you or to label you as fair investor, some investment experience, but not complete or basic
Okay.
understanding of investments and risks of investing.
Yeah, like I said, I just kind of go in once a year and we look at things and they recommend something and I know that there's something involved, but I just don't know how it all works. And I do that. I know they've explained it goes up and down.
Okay, perfect. So some
Okay, sounds
experience,
good.
but
That's
not a
fine.
full understanding, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's move to the next question. And as I've said, this jumps pages for me. Maybe it's not the right PDF. All right, so here I would need to understand what is your income bracket? And this is for
Second one. I'm at like 96 or 97.
50 to 100 would be fair to say, yes? Okay. Your current and future income sources, would you say they are stable, somewhat stable, or unstable? So if you
Stable.
have your crown pension, so that is quite stable.
Yeah.
Potentially income, unless you decide to do something about that pension before you turn 55. There is CPP, old age security, which is your birthday money, as I call it. So there is that stability with that. I don't see you as unstable at all. So it would be either somewhat stable or stable, in my opinion. Where do you lean?
I'm stable for sure.
You're stable.
Yeah.
That's
I get
wonderful.
I've got the steady paycheck. My wife, she's the self-employed, so she's had months that are good, months that are bad, but mine is pretty coming in all the same. It's always the same.
Okay, so because we are right now concentrating on your risk profile, so we will obviously base it on you. Now, don't forget, you still have a free phone call. Ask the audience. And what was the third one, guys? All right. Okay, let's move on. Number 6. Liquid assets are assets that you can redeem for cash quickly and easily for the purpose of covering a shortfall, an unexpected expense, or short-term goal. What is the value of your liquid assets? So, Mark, do you understand the liquid assets, right? It is anything outside of your fixed assets, which is fixed as your home, your condo, or investment property, and everything else is liquid. There might be different tax consequences, but we are not really referring to the tax consequences at this moment. Okay,
Okay, so
so
we've got $30,000 in the bank account. Is that what you're talking about?
that is liquid, yes. You also have your RSPs,
Okay. Is that
right?
okay, so yeah, I've got 300 grand in the RSP. Is that part of it?
Yes, it would be part of it as it is liquid. Once again, if you need to pull it out, you can pull it out. It's just you'll lose quite a bit to the
Gotcha.
taxation. That's
So I guess I'm over 100 grand then.
you are over 100,000. All righty, let's move on. Let me just move my Zoom box here to the other side. All right, number 7, what is your estimated net worth? So this is where we would include all your assets combined between your home, your condo, as well as your investments, once again, such as RSPs, the FSAs, and non-registered investments. So now, because we are doing it just for you, so we could potentially, hypothetically take half of the value of the
Right.
homes.
Okay. Well, our home, we have like the principal residence is like 1.5 million minus, I think we've got like 300 grand or 250, I can't remember, on mortgage. Um, my wife does all that stuff. So that's what, 1.2 million approximately for the house.
Approximately. So yes, and then all the investments. So you're well over $1 million
Okay.
in your net worth, right?
Right. Yeah.
Doing well?
Like, do you need to know, what do you need to know all this for? Like, is it,
Oh, you are a bit quiet.
People ask us all the time why we're asking so many questions. And again, it's coming from regulations. But in terms of the net worth and questions of the annual income of that nature, the reason that we ask those questions is because determining a client's financial circumstances requires consideration of a number of factors, including information pertaining to a client's income, liquidity needs, financial assets, and financial obligations, net worth, and whether the client is using leverage or not to borrow and finance the purchase of other investment products. So, us as licensed individuals and members and approved persons, we need to take reasonable steps to determine a client's net worth, which includes understanding all those different things. So, that's the reason why we need to ask these questions. Again, most of this is taken from the Zero.ca website, where you can find out more information.
That's very nice, Mark. Well, this will help us determine not just the risk profile, but also for the tax planning, the tax consequences. There is estate planning usually involved based on these numbers. I mean, it is all, it's that snowball effect where things come out of the detailed information. And as you saw when we did the planning with you and started entering data, the more detailed we are, the more accurate will be the planning, and the more accurate will be our advice to you as well. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yep.
All right, so number 8, this investment represents approximately what percentage of your total savings and investments? So would it be fair to say that allow me to express my opinion and lead you, but obviously it is 75% and more.
The stuff I've told you guys about already, that's all that we have, and that's it's 100% of what we have. We've told you about it.
We understand that sometimes the trust might not be fully there yet, or you want to keep things private. And we've come across many times clients have not properly given us all the information of what they hold elsewhere. This question is not intended to try to get you to consolidate everything under one shelf, although sometimes that might be a benefit. In fact, in many times, it's more about understanding what's out there, because this would allow us to assess whether an investment that we recommend might lead you to have an over concentration in a certain product or sector. And that's the main reason for that. So it's important to divulge what you've got everywhere to your trusted financial professional when they ask.
Okay. All right. And don't forget, as I've said in the beginning, usually, and this is outside of interview, so usually this is done per platform basis. So now we are just doing one general questionnaire as an example. All right. Number 9, what is your age group? Well, don't really need to. There's a lot of writing about it, but in reality, it's all about coming closer to that retirement. My apologies.
53.
You're 53. Okay, so that's the third line, right? You see that?
No, don't do that. I'm the second line. I can see.
Oh, yes. My apologies. I'm looking at closer to retirement official years. You're only in the second line. That's wonderful. Me too. All right, you're right. So we have a second line. And once again, this is where you pay attention how important it is to actually go through these questionnaires. Not once in a decade, but much more often. Once the brackets changes like this, once we are closer to a major or main event, this is when it is important to review the investment profile. Okay, all right. Let's move down here. So we have just a few more questions.
Okay.
Question number 10 is, let me read it out. So now it truly we are coming to the point of risk tolerance questionnaire. So which of the following statements best describes your investment preference for this portfolio? Now, this is based on your determined novice experience, fair experience. This is based on your experience in general in what you've had throughout your financial institution. And this is where we determine where do you rate yourself? How do you feel about your own risk profile? So as you can see, it's a straight line. To the left is the least conservative, the least risk averse, and or risk not averse. That would be the opposite, right? And to the higher risk point. So on the right-hand side, let's look at all 5 different options, and please tell me, where do you feel the most comfortable?
So the next few questions that Yvette is going through all comes down to finding out the risk profile. It's assessing a client's willingness to accept risk, which can be risk tolerance, a client's ability to endure potential financial losses, which is risk capacity, Also, interpreting a client's responses to questions and not attributing inappropriate weight to certain answers. We also look to identify clients that are more suited to placing their money in cash or guaranteed investment products because they may be unwilling or unable, not just unwilling, but also unable to accept the risk of loss of capital.
In respect
Well,
to markets and risks.
I mean, when I went to the bank, I know they said that I was balanced.
You
So I think he was saying it's like kind of in the middle. Does that mean I'm
kind
that dot in
kind
the
of
middle?
well, let's read and see how it relates to you. So if you look at the middle as the bank suggested, and which might very well be,
Like
it says,
I want to make
yeah.
money, but I don't want to lose any money. Like honestly, I would love to get like 10% return, but I I buried my head when it went down like 20%. Like I don't know if that makes sense. I don't want to lose money.
You don't want to lose money. So that is a bit of a conservative, on a conservative side as well, but you are looking to earn some interest and dividends and capital gains. Well, let's move along with the questionnaire and see where it puts us. So the middle would be, I would like to have a balance between risk and return potential. And this
Right.
is exactly what you're stating, right? So I will eliminate the last one, which is I am willing to accept significant risk to maximize
Um,
my potential return. That's definitely not you, right?
I don't want to. I want to sleep at night. I want to make sure that I'm not losing everything to zero.
All right. So probably and once again, so we are not picking this, but however, on the opposite spectrum, the safety of my investment is most important. I'm willing to accept limited returns. How do you
Hmm.
feel about this statement?
What's limited?
Limited is where it's in a way a fixed type of investment, which may be a GIC,
Hmm.
guarantees you a certain interest, but that you know that you won't be able to earn anything more than what that guarantee is.
Right.
Usually, those types of investments will benefit more
Like I know that I had some
financials. Yeah,
GICs the past couple of years after COVID, like GICs went up pretty good, like 5%. So I was happy with that. But then my neighbor had like 20% return like the
yeah,
same year. And I was like really upset.
that's right, because
So
the
I'd like to have
markets.
more than five if I can, but I also don't want to have like I don't want to have too much risk. Like so
Okay.
maybe not the lowest one, but somewhere like the second or the third. Maybe I am balanced then.
All right.
I
So the
put it
second is
balanced. Put it in the middle. Put it in the middle.
put
I'll stay balanced then.
stay balanced. Okay, let's all right. So here is going to be an interesting a statement for you and a question, and I want you to think about the four options that will be given in a second. So
Yep.
determining an appropriate investment strategy involves balancing potential risk against expected returns. So when making investment decisions, do you give more weight to potential losses or potential gains? Basically, are you looking at glass half full or half empty? And here are your four options.
Well, yeah, I think I really don't want to lose money, so I think I'm more focused on the losses, but I do want
Okay.
gains. So mostly losses. I'm worried about losses.
So potential losses only, or would we say potential losses more than potential gains?
Potential losses more than potential gains.
Okay, so this gives us a bit of an opportunity for that balanced portfolio to have exposure for the snowball to keep rolling, even though you might be drawing some income starting in 3 years, right? All right, now we have a picture for you, 12. Chart below shows the greatest 1 year loss and the highest 1 year gain on four different investments of 100,000. So given the potential loss or gain in any year, in which of these investments would you be most comfortable investing? So we have four, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the bottom. So here, if you had invested 100,000, there was zero potential for loss. However, maximum gain you could have expected in this hypothetical graph is $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, the last example is you could have experienced a $20,000 loss, which is from 100, you're down to 80. However, you could also experience a 25,000 gain, which
Okay.
is 25%. And then we have two middle options of either loss of 2,000
I
and
like that one. That one right there. I like it.
between 2 and 5.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so let's pick that. Another question in similar context is 13 and 14. We're almost done here, okay? Just a bit more. So, understanding your comfort level with periods of fluctuation in the value of your investment portfolio is important to developing an investment strategy. If the value of your investment portfolio drops too far, you may be tempted to make changes that would lock in the loss and exclude you from participating in a market recovery. What is the largest drop in the value of 100,000 investment portfolio that you could tolerate if financial crisis occurred? And here are your options. So how much out of 100,000 that you would see a loss on paper before you stop sleeping?
Mm.
How far
Well,
would you
I think
go in a drop?
I definitely wouldn't want to see the last one to 50,000. That's for sure. Even 70. Honestly, I would start feeling nervous around 90,000, but I'd probably just kind of ignore it, thinking it'll come back. If I saw it go to 85,000, then I'd be calling you. I'd be like, what's going on?
Okay. So would it be
85,000.
would it be fair to us to pick this option of
Yeah, at 90,000,
15?
I wouldn't bother you. I'd be expecting you to call me. But
Okay.
at 85,000, I'd be picking up the phone.
So let's pick 15% drop. Drop is the maximum drop that you would feel comfortable with
I wouldn't feel
knowingly.
comfortable. That's when I'd want to call you.
That's the maximum that you could tolerate. Okay. And once again, you know, the markets will always continue going up and down. There's just no straight line. The only straight line is for GIC type of investment, right? So it is
Okay.
important to understand. Now, this is 14. So now we have the last question with 4 pictures for you.
Yay. Okay.
Okay. We're
Yeah.
almost done. Last question about it. So now 4 hypothetical graphs. We're looking at 15-year span in all 4 of them. You will see that portfolio A, you see the 0 mark.
Yeah.
There was in 15 years, there was actually a correction, probably real property fund or something, where there was a loss of 1%. So 1 year negative. However, your average growth rate is 1.5%.
No.
Okay. Now keep in mind, this is all hypothetical, okay?
Yeah. Okay.
Let's go right away to most aggressive side,
I
which is
like that one.
portfolio.
6.5%. I like that.
You like 6.5. Keep in mind,
I
it
wish
is
it was more.
hypothetical graph. But hold on a second. If you like the 6.5, would you be able to stomach a loss of 20%? Now, in previous question, you said
Well,
at 85, you would call me.
okay. So then I should pick number C, letter C then, right? Because it says 15 is the one,
15
right?
is the biggest drop in this example. There were drops in the middle, not as high. So 3 negative years in 15-year term. However, it averaged 5% annually.
Okay. All right, let's go with that one.
You
I'm
like that?
comfortable with that one. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if 5% will do it to make enough money. I guess that's what you guys are going to calculate for me.
And
But
once again, Mark, this is a hypothetical example.
okay.
It doesn't mean that moderate portfolios are all suddenly just performing 5%. As you said, your neighbor down the street did what, 25% while you did 5?
He's always making money every year that I hear about. I'm never making
Yeah.
anything. He
Do you
bought
think he
Bitcoin when
always
it went
tells
up.
you when he doesn't make money?
I don't know. I only hear when he makes money.
Well, that's right. That's the good news to share. All right, so Drums, are you ready to see who you are based on our hypothetical analysis?
Sure.
So as you can see, this is basically a summary of this exercise. It's retirement savings, time horizon 3 to 6 years. Although I would like to change it to 10 plus, because even though you will start drawing money in maybe a couple of years, it does not mean that you will take 1/3 of it, unless it's a specific investment designated for a future home purchase abroad.
Okay.
Okay, that's something we can revisit. Your investment knowledge fair, your risk tolerance. Now, this is populated based on the questions that we answered, so it is medium. Your risk capacity comes out very high. Your investment profile comes to moderate, conservative to moderate. Just like the bank said, you are somewhere balanced, but at least now with me understanding a bit more about you,
Okay.
by asking these questions, I understand the nature of how you think and what type of risk or expectations you have. And I think this is a very good medium to stay at. Keep in mind, Serge, that once again, when we redo these questionnaires, the profile might be changing. It
Okay.
depends on the amount of money that we have left. Okay, so at this point, thank you very much. And
Thank you,
I'm
Iveta.
remove your hat and please take over. I think it might have been a little too long.
All right. Thank you so much. If
Thank
anybody
you.
has any questions, put them in the chat. Now, what you just seen here is a tool. And when you're meeting with your financial planning professional, they're going to be listening to everything you say, hopefully, from the first meeting, because it's not just really about answering yes or no questions. It's really understanding your psychology with what it means for risk, because it's it's kind of like a cookie cutter, these tools. So part of the tool is one thing. Do we answer questions so we have something that we can talk about? I don't know if you saw the engagement there a little bit. That's typically a conversation we'll have, that Yvette and I will challenge someone when they're answering one question one way and then they answer another question a different way, because it's really important to not be pegged into a hole for the rest of your life that, you're moderate conservative. There's a lot of discussions around that. So when you're meeting with your professional, make sure you ask a lot of questions so that they can engage you as well. Okay. So now, knowing that, so that part of the process can happen at the very beginning when you're meeting with someone, or in the middle, or at the end. But now what happens is that with that piece of information, we go to the next step, which is now we can say, well, Mark, you said that you were moderate conservative. We agreed with that. Maybe we had some slight issues with it, but that means that, well, you're moderate in the RSP account that you already sent us the statements for. So really no changes need to be made there unless we can find some way to either lower some fees or whatever. And that kind of guides us nicely into the next part, is how do you invest while you're abroad? I'm going to stop you here for 1 second, and I just want to ask if anybody wants to share. Uh, if you're not comfortable, you don't have to. Is it mostly mutual funds, stocks, GICs, cash? Like, what kind of investments do you guys all have questions about? Let's put it that way. If you have questions, not that you own, feel free to put it in the chat. And I'll let Yvette monitor that while I go on to talking about, first of all, and I've got about, it's 7:36. I want to give Yuri about at least 10 to 15 minutes at the end. So that means I've got 9 minutes to speed through this rest of this part. Most people were meeting, they're DIYers, do-it-yourselfers, right? So, and that could be like you go to the bank, you meet somebody, you do an RSP, you get a mutual fund, or maybe you're going on a direct investing website like one of the big banks, and you're either buying some stocks or some ETFs or whatever. You might be doing it that way. And one of the things that might stumble you when you're not in Canada, when you're living in Spain or Europe, is that you have gone through that, what we call That questionnaire, by the way, leads to what we call in our jargon KYC, which is know your client. And when I ask Yvette, why do you need to know this information? Well, it's minimum basic information we have to ask. And if you don't answer those questions, we cannot open an account for you. It's a requirement by law that we ask these questions just so that we know that you're capable to suffer a loss if there is a loss. So for example, if you said your whole net worth is $50,000 and you want to bet it all on black at the most aggressive, it's against our fiduciary duty to recommend that that's a good idea. Like it would be our discussion to say, are you sure you want to do this? Because you don't have like millions behind you. And at that point, a good financial planning firm might even refuse your account because it's not worth the risk and you're on your own to do it that way. And so these is why the questions are asked. Now, when you're in Europe, you have to find a way, or the firm has to find a way to update this on a regular basis. Otherwise, there could be restrictions placed on the account. So if you're a DIYer, my first suggestion is make sure you talk with your financial institution before you leave, whether that's one of the banks, one of the brokerage firms, whatever, and ask them, if I'm not in Canada, can I still have my accounts with you? Because some firms might say no. They may not have the capability to maintain your accounts. Some firms may say yes. However, you can only sell, you cannot buy or do any changes to it. And some firms may even restrict you down the road from only just selling if your KYC, know your client, is not updated. The industry standard on average, the industry rule actually, is that it must be updated every 36 months at a minimum. If it's a non-discretionary type of account, and I'll explain what that is, that means that if you don't update it in every 3 years, your account can start getting restricted. Some firms will restrict it earlier than that. It doesn't mean you never have access to your money. You will always have access to get your money. You just may not have access to do anything else, like move things around, sell this and buy that, or add to it for sure, for example. So that's one of the risks with DIY. It doesn't mean you can't do it. You just have to be aware of why there might be restrictions. It's not always just about, well, you're not here, so we don't want to help you. There are legal and compliance reasons for those. So that's DIY and KYC. So what do you do? In my experience over the decades, I've seen everything in terms of how people put together a portfolio. And usually it's at the advice of someone in an office. Like you should either, depending on who you talk to, we all have different ways we have been taught to build portfolios for our clients. And when I say the word portfolio, I'm talking about a group of investments put together in a basket, like in an account. So one way that I was taught a long time ago was that here's $100,000. Let's find out their risk profile. Are they balanced? Are they moderate? Okay, great. Now, if they're balanced, let's make sure we diversify their money. So we'll buy like one mutual fund in the United States kind of stocks. And I'm assuming everybody here knows what a mutual fund is. If you don't, feel free to reach out. We'll explain all that and how that works. But we buy, let's say, $20,000 in US stocks, and then another mutual fund, 20,000 in Canadian stocks, and then maybe 10 to 15,000 in international fund. Back when I was starting out, there was like sector funds. So Japan was big back then. You got to buy 5,000 in Japan. And then maybe the rest, $40,000 were put in a series of different bond funds. So now you've got 5 to 10 mutual funds, and I've seen even 20 mutual funds. And that is just a recipe for disaster, in my humble opinion. The reason for that is that when you have that many different investments, you have to regularly meet, or your consultant should be contacting you regularly to rebalance it regularly. And that sometimes does not happen because either appointments are booked and you don't make it, the consultant doesn't reach out to you. Because what happens is, if let's say your mutual fund in the US that's 20,000 has a great bump and it's now worth 30,000, you made some profits that you may want to take. In fact, it's recommended you rebalance back to your original setup that you had. So you'd sell that 10,000 and buy where it's down. So maybe if the Canadian mutual fund is down to 15, put another 5 there. And by the way, everything I'm saying right now, this is not financial advice. Please, I have to disclaimer, this is not something you should be doing immediately. I'm just telling you an example of what I've seen in the past. Rebalancing is important to keep within your risk profile, because if you came out to be moderate, like Mark did, but you don't pay attention to how your mutual funds go up or down, you might all of a sudden become aggressive because all your stock mutual funds have gone up. And the value of that whole $100,000 portfolio, which used to be $60,000 in stock, maybe now 70,000, just because you haven't been watching it. Now that's great for you because you see your statements and it's all gone up and you're so happy. You're like telling your neighbor, I made 25%. But guess what? You're actually now at a higher risk level, which means that you could experience a bigger loss. And that's where the value of rebalancing is important. So when you move to Spain or Italy or wherever it is, one piece of advice that we recommend is not having 10 different investments, 10 different mutual funds. Depending on where your accounts are, look into portfolio solutions. And portfolio solutions are typically like one investment, but underneath they'll have all those different sectors and all those different parts of the world, US, Canada, Asia, Europe, everywhere. And if I have enough time, which I don't, I'm running out of time. I'm running through this, but what I will do is maybe with the email that we're going to send out to this, I'll send you some examples of portfolio funds that you can look at. And maybe on the before we start the next session, I'll start diving in a little bit to know how you're paying fees on these types of things, because that's one of the biggest questions people always have. What are the fees I'm paying? If I do it myself, it's really cheap, probably. But then is there any value in having someone else do it for me? Okay, so DIY KYC portfolio. Now, the biggest recommendation that we'd say for someone, if you're leaving your investments here in Canada, and it'd be a pretty big reason to sell your RRSPs, especially if they're in the hundreds of thousands, like you better said, you're going to have a huge tax hit if you do that, is to look into something called discretionary portfolios. Discretionary portfolios is where you work with the firm and you ask them, you identify what kind of risk profile you're at, and then they have discretion within that mandate of, let's say, a moderate conservative investor to adjust the portfolio up and down, make sales, make buys on your behalf without you having to tell them to do it. And they will make sure that they're keeping within a moderate risk profile, and you don't have to worry whether you should be investing in the US or selling some of the Canadian investments and rebalancing. They will do that for you automatically. So that makes it very easy for you if you're in another country to say, if you need $10,000 for your cash flow or expenses, when you call your broker or your advisor and say, hey, I need 10,000. Well, guess what? If you have 10 mutual funds, they're not going to be able to offer you advice which one to take it from, because if you remember from a previous session, we're not licensed in Spain. So because of that, technically, we're not allowed to give you advice of which fund to sell. But if there's only one fund that's discretionary advised and it has all the stuff underneath it, all you need to say is, I need $10,000 for my investment. Boom, hit a button. There's your 10,000. We don't have to worry about which one to sell within that portfolio, if that makes sense. Any questions have come up? Anything in the chat?
Sorry, I
Because I
was
know there's a
muted.
ton of information here and I really sped through it.
There is a question, but is this still possible once you become non-resident? My understanding is that you are extremely limited.
Yes,
Kirsten is asking the question.
very good question.
Mhm.
You have, in most cases, I'm not aware of anywhere that you can do it when you're non-resident. You need to set up your accounts before you leave. Once you're gone, if that's the question or not, I don't know. I will touch on all sorts of different parts of that question. So if you're going to keep it here, you must set up before you leave. If you've already got it set up, make sure you talk to your financial institution before you leave, saying, "Hey, I'm leaving," because guess what? They need to know what tax slip to send you, whether it's an NR4 or a T4. And if they don't, well, you're going to be doing taxes and you're not going to have the right slips. There's forms that we fill out for our non-resident clients so that we don't withhold the full 25% and only 15% if there's a tax treaty. So that's really important that they know. I have heard, and I'm not going to say which firms, I've been told, and I've talked with people where they were not able to maintain their accounts at that firm anymore once they told them that they would be a non-resident. I don't know. I didn't call them myself. I mean, I've tried to do some Google searches and I came across lots of limiting disclaimers saying if you are a non-resident, you may keep your account. However, there may be heavy restrictions, or you might not be able to do mutual funds. Some firms like highly recommend discretionary, because that means you've done everything, you left. We don't have to call you to figure out what to do. We're just managing for you on your risk profile, and you just ask us the questions. Now, if the question is, if I'm in Europe, can I open an account? No, absolutely not. That cannot, I can tell you for sure you cannot do that. You have to be in Canada with a Canadian address, by the way. So within the confines of this masterclass, and again, this is not a recommendation. If you should be using your home address, I mean, if it's like a kid's address that it's their home and you're kind of staying there and you're having your mail there, you're not really technically a resident, but I've seen that. It's not a recommendation I'm saying to do this, but people have found workarounds, and just be careful because the CRA will find out. So, but yeah, you have to be a Canadian resident to do all this. Any other questions?
There was a comment about mutual funds and TFSA in general when you were asking to mention, but I think we are good and we have
I had to
12
scoot through
minutes.
this because that it's a big topic, right? So I promise you when we send the email out, I'll put a lot more information in that email about portfolios, discretionary, and next session I will start the topic talking about fees so that you know what you're looking to pay in terms of fees in general out there for the industry. And with that, I will stop. Am I still sharing? I am sharing.
Yes, you are.
I didn't know. I thought I was talking to you guys and it was just showing you a screen. All right. I'm very excited that Yuri has joined us today. Yuri, I met a couple of, well, maybe a month or so ago now, and I had a chat with him.
Right, because
Yuri is
when you move your household goods, you get exemption from paying taxes and duties. Now for cars, it's a different regulation. You have
Right.
to be a EU citizen living in Canada for over a year, and you should be owner of that vehicle for more than 6 months to be eligible for tax and duty free.
Otherwise, you could be an exporter of vehicles and having to pay the duties, right?
Well, the and duties are pretty heavy. It's 10% of duty and 21% VAT, and then close to 15% registration based on CO2 emissions of your vehicle. So it's
would most cars be qualified to go there? Like, I mean, I heard these stories that sometimes you have to modify your cars or something like that. But would most cars be okay if they're within a certain age? Yuri is referred to me by Sergey, who's also here on the chat, and he is a logistics shipper, cargo shipper. Yuri, if you want to unmute and take your camera off, say hello to the crowd, introduce yourself. If anybody here has questions, put them in the chat. Some people said they're not going to move with a car, which is fine. But Yuri told me exactly what to do if you want to move your car. And there's one question that I found really interesting that maybe you can touch on after you introduce yourself, Yuri. So just introduce yourself. I'll stop talking.
Hello, Serge. Hello, Iveta. Hello, everyone. And thank you for inviting me, and thank you for having me here. I'll be more than happy to share with all the experiences. I've been with logistics for 20 years now, and it's a family business. We're dealing with all kind of cargo. It's project cargo, commercial goods, humanitarian aid, and personal belongings shipments to overseas. In total, we moved over 1,000 families, different parts of the world, not only Europe, Australia, you name it. Yeah, I'm normally involved in all household goods shipments by myself, because that requires lots of time and explanation, and I think I'm good with that. My company's name is Prime League. We're located in Toronto. It's a family business. My wife is involved in operation as well. I've been dealing with household shipments, I would say, starting 2015, when my company became a part of a bigger freight forwarding network, which called C Rates, and then I registered company C Rates North America. we were dealing with all the sales leads which were coming to this online shipping platform. And that's when we started getting a huge amount of requests from just people trying to ship their household goods. Because in general, it's not very complicated, but if people don't know how to get prepared for these kind of moves, it can be hectic, and issues can happen. So normally what we do, we offer a few options for people who moves overseas. Normally, I would start with the least expensive option. It all depends how people want to be involved in that shipping process. I do have option for those who don't want to deal and touch anything, but normally I would start from the least expensive one when, we would just deliver empty container to the residential address. People would load their stuff. I'll explain what needs to be done. Once loaded, we would put a seal on the container, and the same person or people who loaded that container, they'll be breaking the seal and open container at destination. There are a few steps involved, right? First of all, we would have to pick the time when container is going to be loaded, and we have to time it with the vessel departure. So these containers, they all belong to the steamship lines, right? We can also buy a purchase container for the shipper so they can keep it as a storage unit. That's possible too. But again, 90% cases, people want to use the liner container or the container who belongs to the shipping line. So all these containers we get released to us a few days before so-called cutoff time. Cutoff time is the time when loaded container has to be returned back to the container yard. And container yard's a place like in Toronto. It's the place where containers get delivered by rail to Montreal port, because any vessels they don't dock to Toronto. So everything goes to Europe would go through the port of Montreal or Halifax. Anything going to Asia would travel to Vancouver by rail, and from Vancouver it would sail to the final destination. So the big benefit of my company to be a part of the Sea Rates network is we have literally an agent in every single country. It is basically every single country we have a representation. It means that once people have to deal with their container, once it arrives at destination, they have an agent, reputable agent who was, checked not by only us, but also by the people who are running the network. Yeah, and they would facilitate picking up the container at the port, customs clearance, and deliver the container to the final destination. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think
That's really great. No, that was really good. You did like our 30-minute discussion in 5 minutes when we recorded. So if anybody wants to see more in-depth answers of what Yuri just said, I will send the link to the YouTube interview. What I found really interesting, I was like asking so many questions, and he was like, "Oh man, this is great." It's like I'm actually talking to someone that doesn't do it. I said, "I don't know how to do it, and I may have to do it." So Yuri was explaining to me how, like, I thought I have to go down to the port and get my stuff, and uh, no, when it gets to Spain or Italy, you're not even allowed to go to the port. It actually gets delivered to you. But one interesting thing you said, well, tell me about the narrow roads and how to get stuff to your final destination.
That's funny, because that's very often people would think container arrives at the port and okay, well we'll just go to the port with a smaller truck and get the stuff picked up. Well, unfortunately, it's not happening. It's just not possible. Container at destination, when it arrives, it gets offloaded from the vessel, and then it's going to sit at the container yard until a proper truck with the chassis arrives, and crane would load it on the chassis and leave the port and deliver to whatever address is. Well, the problem with Europe is very often these streets are so narrow that they cannot accommodate, or even traffic for trucks with the bigger trucks is not allowed by local regulations, right? again, I know which steps we have to take at every step of the shipment to eliminate any issues. Like I would always ask the client, well, do you know approximately where you're going to be moving to? What's going to be the final destination? What's your home address? We're going to check the street. If I have doubts, I would check with our agent and they would confirm and they would say, yes, Yuri, truck cannot deliver there. We have to deliver to the closest warehouse, offload everything at our warehouse, and then shuttle by smaller trucks to the residential address or storage unit.
Yeah. And also, what was the other thing you said? That how to fill the container, it's dropped on your home driveway for like a day or something like that, right? Or a certain number of hours, or how does
Well,
that?
well, normally by default, when we place the booking with the steamship line, we only get 5 to 6 days to keep the container. It has to be returned. Well, we can keep it longer, but we're going to be paying detention demurrage charges, and those charges are very hefty. They can be 250, and starting day 5, they're like $500 a day. So you don't want to go over that allowed period. So yeah, as you mentioned, container would be dropped off. It cannot be put on the ground. Another misconception that people think, okay, well, we will load everything, we will drive our car inside the container. Container stays on the chassis. It's not like a garbage container. It cannot be put on the ground. 44 inches off the ground, that's how it needs to be loaded. You can use the ramps. There's, special equipment that can be used to facilitate the whole loading process. And again, if people don't want to be involved and they don't care paying extra, we can always use our team helpers who would arrive and help load everything.
Awesome. Thank you
I
so much.
have, Yuri, before I let you go, if you don't mind, a couple of questions.
Sure.
Do you also advise or help with the customs? Because I believe the customs, it is very important. It depends on visas and it depends on what status you have in Europe. I understand there is a time frame when that container have to be delivered to be exempt. I mean, it's all I'm asking general questions. And also the manifest. I believe you need to have a manifest of all the items inside that container. Is that?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. There's lots of information on what I would have to explain to cover everything, but in general, yes, we do file export customs clearance in Canada, which calls CERS, and if somebody is moving out of US, it calls ETA number. So we do it in-house. Now, when containers arrive, our agents would take care of that. Their customs broker would do the import customs clearance for that. And in order to be tax exempt, you have to comply with certain rules. And I'll be more than happy to share those rules with people when they reach out, and I'll be able to explain. We would talk what's about their status in Spain. Are they residents? Are they going to be staying there with their students visa? There's many things that need to be considered.
Fantastic.
But for most people moving there and bringing their household goods, they would have to pay taxes and duties for their household goods. That is super important to understand. I mean, you have to apply for tax exemption, but you would have to comply with certain regulations in order to do that. And even when you pay taxes and duties, it's not going to be a significant amount because you assign the price to your stuff. The cost, like let's say 4-bedroom apartment, you can assign a value of $5,000. It's up to you. You normally don't go very low, so it's not suspicious, but it's all used items. They have to be evaluated. You have to assign a value, which you're going to be then paying a VAT and duties at destination.
Perfect. Guys, it's 8 o'clock. We always promise to finish on time. You guys stay on if you'd like. And if Yuri wants to stay on to ask questions. However, everything he just talked, there is a 30-minute interview I've done with Yuri, and he answers all these questions in depth. Of course, you can always reach out to him. Yuri said if Serge sends them, he'll make sure he treats them like kings, right? He'll take care of them pretty well, right? Answer all their
100%.
questions. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. It's 8 o'clock. It's time to go to bed, and we'll see you next week for the next part, which is we'll talk risk and we'll talk more about the next step in retirement planning. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a good night.
Yeah, have a good
Thank
night.
you. Thank you.